I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the Power 365 show, where I interview staff at Microsoft across the Power Platform and Dynamics 365 technology stack. I hope you'll find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Bedford, Massachusetts in the United States. He works at Microsoft as a principal product manager. His mission is to democratize no-code AI solutions, making intelligent technology accessible to everyone. He has successfully had multiple virtual teams and established a strategic partnership to drive innovation and growth. You can find links in the show notes to his bio, social media, and by the way, it's worth monitoring particularly his social media on LinkedIn. He talks a lot about AI. Welcome to the show, Ashish.
Thank you, Mark. Good to be here.
Good to have you on the show. I'm excited that you're here because you're one of these people that I see on LinkedIn constantly putting out great content around AI. And I think it's so important because, you know, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle, we've gone through, I feel, at the start of this year around AI. And now we're into the phase of, I think we're just over the crest, and it's now when the real work gets done for the long tail of what's, you know, going to happen in this AI space for the years ahead. So I'm excited about having you on the show. I always like to get to know my guests to start with, a bit of food, family, and fun. What do you do when you're not doing your tech role? What do they mean to you?
When I'm not doing my tech role, I spend a lot of time with family. I'm an outdoor person, so we do outdoor sports a lot. I'm avid kind of cook at home. So whenever I get an opportunity, I just cook something, and it's super relaxing for me. Put some music on, get a good meal on the table.
Nice. Tell me about your journey into AI, artificial intelligence.
I started Microsoft about 9 years ago as a product manager, and I'd spent a bunch of time doing dev work, project management, and for the most part, product management in my prior roles. But as coming to Microsoft as a product manager, I was part of an AI team. And this was pro devs, pro kind of data scientists, PhD data scientists. And that was my first kind of introduction to AI. It was super fascinating. Everybody was just super talented. And for a long period of time, I had this imposter syndrome myself, like, what am I doing here? Am I in the right place? I tried to teach myself AI for some time, tried to do online courses and things like that. But then I hit pause, and a kind of self-reflection moment for me that, am I trying to be a data scientist, or I'm trying to understand AI to fit my role, right? And I thought that the latter is a better position for me to be in, where I understand AI to an extent where I know where to apply it, when to apply it, what use cases it solves. As a product manager, that is super important for me to get a good grasp on, rather than knowing how to build a model or how to solve an AI kind of slightly build a model, train a model myself, right? That was not important because my team was established to do that. They were trained to do that. My job was something else. So that was my journey. That was my learning curve, I would say.
Mm. Where do you sit currently inside Microsoft? What team, what org are you in, and what's your current focus?
I'm product manager for a tool called AI Builder that sits in Power Platform. Power Platform is this no-code platform within Microsoft. And we serve, again, several Power tools, Power Apps, Power Automate, and others in the Power Automate or Power Platform kind of ecosystem. We also serve a bunch of internal Dynamics teams who all are, again, based on the same horizontal capabilities. As just my own work, I focus a lot on GPT-based capabilities within Power Automate. So we're trying to bring these large language models to our makers, citizen developers, makers, kind of use that interchangeably.
Mm.
And the goal is to simplify that experience. In itself, working with large language model is simple. You're interacting in an actual form factor. You're using text to work with these models, but just removing all the other clutter, right? You kind of make it use case scenario oriented is the focus, right? That's what we work on.
Mm. At what point has anything around GPT in the context of AI Builder, is anything GA'd in that space yet? Or are we still in I was in Atlanta when AI Builder was first announced. Was that like 2018, 2017?
It was before my time.
Oh, it was before your time. Okay.
In the team, yeah, for sure.
I remember it coming out and, there were, I think, 4 models in it at the time. Imagery recognition. There was text, looking for, I call them IO on-off scenarios, like looking, and I forget what the other 2 were. And it really was that point of bringing AI to the masses. But it was the AI that we know about pre the world changing at around the start of this year, right? Pre-generative AI and large language models. So it was machine learning based, and of course, all based on Azure Cognitive Services, things like that. Where are we at from the pre-AI builder of that time to the use of large language models as part of AI builder?
I would say our ethos is still the same. Our goal is still to enable low-code citizen kind of makers build an intelligent application with foundational and state-of-the-art AI technology. I mean, I always say we are ourselves not an AI team. We are facilitating whatever AI exists within Microsoft and bring it to this kind of platform and this audience in the most simple form, right? And bring it closer to their use case. And so what I mean by that is if you imagine Microsoft AI stack as a layer cake, the bottom layer is your AI platform where data scientists kind of build their models. And this is your Azure machine learning environments and workspaces where pro data scientists work. If you go on this top, the middle layer is where all the cognitive services sit, right? A lot of them are based on the same technology that other pro data scientists would use using Azure machine learning and stuff. But there is a lot of ready to use stuff there. Right? You can imagine custom vision or computer vision, speech APIs, form processing capabilities. A lot of those are ready to use as well. But that is also a layer where you're still working with APIs. Pro developers are kind of using them. And our goal is to take a lot of that goodness and transition it to this no-code, low-code space and make it very scenario-oriented. So you'll see capabilities like invoice processing, capabilities like identity, document kind of parsing capability, or just document processing in itself, right, with invoice, receipt, understanding, and things like that. So they're scenario-focused, use-case-focused, but again, running on the same state-of-the-art model. With GPT, a little bit of that is changing because GPT is kind of a mixed bag. It is a pre-trained model, but you can set its own goals. You can give it your own instructions and make it work for you. So even though you can change the underlying model, you can change its behavior by instructing it, by prompting it, right? So that is something that is super powerful makers because, again, this is a no-code interaction. You could just tell the model what you want it to do, and you could define the outputs. And it is a net new model. So, for example, we don't have a summarization model in AI Builder. You could use GPT to act as a summarization model, right? You can say, hey, I want you to summarize this email or this incoming message from my customer and give me talking points about it, right? All of that.
Yes.
So in that sense, it's super powerful and it's customizable as well. Our thinking going forward is to kind of bring it even closer to scenarios and use cases and make it like super actionable. Because again, it's still very general, right? It's a general purpose model. You can ask a bunch of things, but again, the more targeted, the more kind of closer to end scenario we take it, the better is the uptake from developers or citizen makers in this case.
How do I bring my own data to the mix, right? So the large language model's in place. And let's say, to keep the scenario simple, that I have a large knowledge base around all the products my organization has. How can I, with an AI builder, then provide that data set to be consumed And then whether it be, for example, summarization or I want to Q&A it, there may be a range of samples. I might be out on a job and I need to fix something and I need the precise information on this fix from the data that we have, back at the office, so to speak. How do I bring my own data to that mix?
So some of that is possible through the AI Builder capability even today, but we acknowledge it's kind of limited, right? So I'll explain both of them. First of all, the GPT model is your kind of base model, and you do two things. You give it an instruction, you give it a context, right? Any prompt will have a combination of these two, unless you're asking it to do some creative task, generate a poem or generate song lyrics or whatnot, right? Otherwise, most of the time you're giving it an instruction, summarize Blah email or summarize, generate response to this message, right? So you're giving it an instruction and you're giving it a context. A lot of times that context is your own data. Could be a set of emails or a set of rows coming from a data source and say, hey, using this, create me a response for this incoming email, right? Something like that. So that is how you can use it. Most of the power tools already sit on top of a data layer, which is called Dataverse. So your data already lives there. When you're incorporating this model in your flows or your apps, you can query that data to match the new incoming data and pick the right rows, and then bring it in the context of the GPT model, and thus prompt the model saying, hey, here is the new data, here's my instruction, here's the existing data. I want you to use all of that information, give me this unique response or unique summary. We're going to make some of that super simple, that you wouldn't have to get involved in querying, and we'll take care of some of that workload for you. But again, those are things that will come a little bit later.
So you talked about context there, and context being my data. How about context being things like the device I'm using, the time of day, my geography? Yeah, let's just take those three. Is that considered context, or would we label it different?
It depends on the scenario that you're trying to hit, right? A little bit. With Power Apps, you will see a lot of that context is present. What kind of device you're using, your compass, your location, right? So if your scenario is specific to, I'm creating a location-aware kind of application, and my response to my user experience can be personalized based on the location of my user, you could do that. So for example, you have some kind of a field frontline staff, they're addressing a break device or something, right? Then you could definitely capture that location information and then give them awareness of where they are, what are the devices they're interacting with, or facility that they're working on. And thereby you can kind of bring in that location aware context for them.
Yeah. So would we call that context? That still would sit under the heading of context?
I would say you will use some of that metadata to find the right context. So for example, was
brilliant.
I have a Dataverse table where my prior equipment break records are, right? And I know that my frontline staff is working in a given location. I can filter down my Dataverse rows based on that location, say, hey, here is all the breakage in the past 1 year that I've had, and then further narrow down that scenario to give them the right information that they need to kind of complete the job that they are after.
Yeah. So like the use case that's going through my mind that I would see is that somebody is logged into a computer as a bank teller, right? So we would know about this person, what's their role privilege, what they are allowed to do, what's their day-to-day role. We would have an understanding of that based on their authentication, right? We know where they are. They work in this bank at this location, this geography, and they're a teller, so they're going to be frontline staff in front of customers taking questions. Customer walks up to the counter and said, what's your fixed term rate for this type of mortgage? They got to give a very precise, accurate answer, right? Whatever the fixed is, X percentage, and whatever the T's and C's, et cetera, around it. If they were to query that, let's say, through a Power Virtual Agent on their computer terminal, metadata, digital exhaust, whatever you want to call it, would that be ingested into the prompt? So who they are, their geography, obviously talking to a customer, they're wanting the rate for this. So even though our data set has every rate going back from where the bank started, we don't want an old rate, right? It needs to be. And so the challenges I hear under that use case is that if that's just a SharePoint repository of all that data and I query what's the fixed rate for this mortgage, I am going to get 5,000 return results with links to archaic, outdated, but it had part of my prompt in it. So can that be fed into then the context of the data and then a precise, based on today's date, where you're located, what our current rates we've advertised in market, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff would be a very precise answer back so that they could, with full authority, give the correct data?
Yeah, great question. I would say no. And the reason I would say I'm going to introduce a new concept called RAGs, which is retrieval-based, retrieval augmented generation, right? And what it does is it breaks the task into two steps. So for example, the question that you were asking, the way we would perform that is the first step is understanding the intent of what's the question being asked. And then what is the metadata that I'm working with, the location, the teller, the account, the type of account, and all of that, right? And all of the metadata about the end user that you're trying to cater. Take that metadata, go search my Dataverse tables, right? Find the relevant information. That relevant information is maybe spread across like 50 rows or whatnot, right? The goal is to make a query to narrow down that data as much as possible. And then to be able to peel out the right answer. That's the job that we offload to the LLM. Say, hey, here is all the context data. Here is the instruction that I want you to follow, which is the original intent of the question. Go find me the right summary, the right answer, the right rate of long-term kind of deposit or whatever. And that's how we achieve that scenario. So retrieve, which is the first kind of the map reduce kind of world.
Yeah.
If you kind of make a parallel, retrieve the right information, give to the LLM, let the LLM generate an augmented result based on that context data.
So what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong if I play back what you just said, the request is really handed into a brilliant prompt engineer that takes into account all that, the metadata, the intent, and it crafts a very precise request then to the LLM, GPT-4 in this case, let's say, and therefore, because it was such a precise prompt, it then retrieves the correct data. The 90-Day Mentoring Challenge is a comprehensive program to help you take your Microsoft business application career to the next level. Since 2018, more than 790 people from 67 countries have benefited from this program. I've heard from past participants that the 90-Day Mentoring Challenge helped them advance their careers, from switching jobs, starting companies, to gaining industry recognition like MVP Award or full-time employment at Microsoft. Enrollments are currently open for the next cohort, which starts on the 1st of January 2024. Find out more at ako.nz365guy.com. That's ako.nz365guy.com.
Yep. So again, the step one is the query for the data, for the reduced set of data. And the second step is that precise prompt with the original intent, this reduced set of data, and then offload it to an LLM to create the final answer, or that reduced answer for you. And that's how kind of a lot of that large data problem can be solved. When you ask the question, can I bring my data to be precise, cut down on hallucination, great tool to cut down hallucination, because model has this tendency to answer questions that it doesn't know. But the more data that you pack in for that model to educate it, it'll help cut down hallucination a lot.
We've talked now about prompt engineering. And I like what you said actually earlier on. You said that in the observation of your career path that you were going on, you started to look at going down a data scientist path and then realized, no, actually, there are people that specialize in that. I don't need to go down that path, but I do need to understand, AI. And I feel I've been on the same journey. I've thought, oh my gosh, I have to become a data scientist. And just quietly, that bores me to death. That's just not the way I'm wired to go down that path. But as I have learned, I realize is that, and I don't think I'm the only one in this boat, but it's like there's so much to learn, but it's like, what do I need to learn to get really good? Because, I come from a company that has many years of experience in the AI space and very publicly. And I look at the training resources I have to me behind the scenes, and in my mind, I go, that's all old AI, right? It's like, it's not where the world is now. That's all yesteryear AI. And it's kind of like, I don't want to spend my time learning. Like, honestly, if I looked at an AI course now and I saw the creation date was pre 2023, probably not going to, it might not even get me to go deeper and look at the contents, right? Now, in saying that, and the company I work for is IBM, and so obviously got a big brand with Watson. They've bought out Watson X. Hopefully I don't get smacked for this, but I would have never named it over a dying product brand and reinvent it with another one. But they did. And I just like, and I've done a lot of that type of training, and I'm just like, yeah, it's good fundamentals and good stuff for how AI was. But if I was to learn AI today, what kind of resources do you recommend that folks go out and learn in the post New Year's 2023 world that we're in? And really from that perspective of, I know as a consultant that I see everything I do is going to have an AI component in the future, no matter what. So I can have 20 years experience in Dynamics, my experience in the Power Platform from the day it came out as a concept. But I think all of those have to be now include AI fundamentally for where our world is going. So in that context, how would you advise people, encourage people to look at AI in context of their career or context of their learning paths? Because what I noticed, right, Google, they've got their AI program, Microsoft on LinkedIn Learn is their AI program and stuff. And great, they're good. My wife's gone through the Google one, being she's ex-Google herself, and it's great. And then it gets really technical, right? And it's kind of like, now all your business stakeholders like, I'm out, now it's over my head. This is not the stuff I need to know.
I will start by saying that almost every job will get impacted by AI. That doesn't necessarily mean AI will replace the job, but AI will become an intrinsic part of your job. We're seeing this as the new school year is starting. Teachers are trying to figure out how to work with AI. I mean, there was a time everybody resisted, maybe not everybody, but a lot of that education community resisted. People, our kids playing around with AI. They're trying to now understand how to live with it, how to use it as a resource, as a tool to help educate better and reach out to more students and work with them. Similarly, as a product manager, I'm thinking about how I could use AI as a resource to do my job better, right? So the question will always come down to how you use this as a tool to do your job better. And people who will figure that out will excel in the paths that they have chosen. How do you learn? Again, there are two paths there, right? I mean, for people who deal day to day with AI, that learning path is different, right? I mean, we're learning about AI safety all the time. You post a ton about it because that is something that I am deep in. I'm learning right now.
Yes.
But for almost everybody else who's going to use AI as a tool to do their job better is start using it, start understanding scenarios on where the AI augments you and where you bring your own intuition to kind of perform the job well. And just cracking that code is going to be the recipe for success, at least in my mind.
Yeah. That word augment, I think, is critically important in that I find I use it a lot for finding my gaps in my thinking. I will say, this is what I'm doing, and I'll give it a whole, this is what's important. Now, almost play the devil's advocate and go, where is my thinking? What am I missing? And what's blown me away, I've used it in a couple of contexts. I've used it in the context of my will. I took the legal document from the lawyer and I passed it in, and I said, in context of, because I'm New Zealand based, New Zealand law, in this will, what is missing? It came up with 4 sections that the lawyer had totally not brought up, not addressed, but were all very relevant. And I was like, hey, that's brilliant, right? It didn't mean I just copied and pasted what it said, but it gave me context to go back and further a discussion as to why these things weren't in it. And then I often find from a training perspective, I can give it, let's say, the table of contents of a training scenario and say, what would the gaps be in this? What didn't I cover? And I'll give you a simple one. I do a course on communications in the context of Microsoft and the tech we work in. And I said, what additional module should have been there? And it said, you didn't cover listening. You talked all about talking and written communication and verbal, but you never did anything about listening. And I was like, duh, like so obvious. But I find that's the beauty of having this, augmented experience. And when you're giving it the prompt to look for that, it's allowing you to uncover your blind spots in many situations.
I myself use it as 3 predominant scenarios in my kind of work life. One is a writing assistance. I use it a lot to kind of write whatever I'm writing, maybe it's specs or requirements and things like that, to kind of make them more holistic. I use it as a critique, right? The stuff you were talking about, here's what I'm thinking about, what are the gaps, right? What am I not thinking about, right? Or how it could go down south, right? So as a critique, I use it a lot. And then the third that I use it is for ideation, right? I mean, here are 3 things that I'm thinking about. What else could I be thinking? Or this is an industry and we're thinking about AI and this specific piece of it. What are the other scenarios there?
Yes.
So idea generation as a critique and then writing assistant, those are kind of at least 3 ways that I use it a lot in my own work.
I like it. You knew this podcast was coming up. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before I want to ask you a bit about how you're using AI personally in your personal life? Like how you're incorporating it in outside of your role in Microsoft, but how you finding practical application, as I say, either in your personal life or it might be a side hobby or anything like that. Or are you pretty much staying straight in the wheelhouse of how you use it for your 9-to-5 job, so to speak?
I would say the current kind of investment of time that I'm putting in, other than work, is just learning more about AI safety. I'm reading a ton of papers. I kind of try to summarize sometimes those. So not so much incorporating AI in my personal life or time. I'm spending a lot of time reading about and learning outside just work context. And so again, the 2 reasons: A, I'm passionate about that space, about AI safety, bias, and how do we bring AI in an equitable way. B, there is so much going on in that space, and I feel that is going to be a keenly contested area in the next few years, because there is a lot of room for goodness with AI, but there is also possibility to do wrong. And again, it's in the hands of people who are thinking about this AI safety in general, on which levers we use and how much we use them. So again, there's a ton happening in that space, and it's super exciting because that'll dictate how all of this transitions, right? Good way, bad way, however that pans out, right? So again, it's interesting to watch that space and learn from that. And there's good takeaways, I feel.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. If there's a guest you'd like to see on the show from Microsoft, please message me on LinkedIn. If you want to be a supporter of the show, please check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 guy. How will you create on the Power Platform today? Ciao.